Hello everybody. It is September 6th, 2025 here in the United States of America. In tonight's video I'd like to talk about this leak from the New York Times about a supposed SEAL team mission into North Korea that was meant to plant some kind of listening device, and instead of that mission being accomplished, several North Korean fishermen were killed and this SEAL team fled the area. Now, as many of you might be aware, maybe some of you who don't live in the United States perhaps are not aware, but oftentimes when there's some kind of rivalry in the government, two people that don't like each other, maybe a president who stepped on a few toes on his way to the top, maybe a dispute between executives higher up in the government, like the president, for example, or maybe other high-ranking officials. What tends to happen is something gets leaked to American media, usually the New York Times, it seems, and this leak is usually meant to discredit or hurt somebody's political rival. Whether or not it benefits the nation is of a secondary concern. American politics are very petty, and we're not a unified nation by any means, especially when it comes to our foreign policy or geopolitical strategy. There's a lot of different power factions vying for control of the system, and I believe that many of these people would actively sacrifice the better of the country just to make sure their rival ends up with egg on their face, so to speak. So back in 2019, I'm sure many of you remember that President Donald Trump was in office at the time, and he was attempting to have some kind of détente with the North Koreans. He was attempting to make some kind of deal with them where they would denuclearize and then formally end the Korean War. And at that point, U.S. troops could leave South Korea and Korea could work on some kind of meaningful reunification. Now, many of you out there, I'm sure, are aware this all fell apart after some initial progress where President Trump flew to South Korea, crossed the DMZ with Kim Jong-un, into North Korea and came back. They had a summit, some face-to-face negotiations and whatnot, and everything seemed to be going well. And then suddenly, I believe during one of the following summits in Vietnam, everything sort of went sideways, and at that point, a cooling of relations no longer seemed possible. And some people credit John Bolton with that, his heavy-handed approach to U.S. foreign policy. Some people say that it was President Trump's fault due to his heavy-handed way of negotiating. Some say the Koreans are just the North Koreans are just naturally suspicious people and weren't exactly ready to trust the United States. It's hard to say. There are several different rumors floating around about why this happened. I do not think, though, that this operation is the cause of that. I think given North Korea's very firm stance in regards to defending its sovereignty and its territory, I believe something like this would have been perceived by the North Koreans as an act of war, and I would have suspected relations would have deteriorated much faster had they been aware, or had this been something that was common knowledge within the North Korean government. Now, why is this leak happening now? Well, this is all meant to discredit and sabotage President Trump's foreign policy. His foreign policy has been a mixed bag, so to speak, inconsistent, successes in some places, such as the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and then failures in others. This inability to help broker a lasting peace in the Gaza-Israel conflict, and the failure to stop the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, as I've mentioned before, American politics is very petty. Somebody in the upper echelons of the intelligence community with an axe to grind against President Trump because, let's be honest, the intelligence agencies don't like President Trump. They see him as a usurper and an outsider, and they would gladly tear him down even if it hurt the country just because, well, they don't like him. This is the unfortunate reality of American politics. This is kind of one of the areas where Russia and China and other more authoritarian countries have an advantage. They have a national goal, a foreign policy, and a geopolitical strategy that essentially stays aligned behind the leader or the upper echelons of government. And these kinds of leaks to sabotage those said leaders generally don't happen. So once there is a goal in mind, the nation can pursue it generally uninterrupted. The United States, not so much. Like I said, I think this was meant to further inflame tensions between the United States and North Korea, especially considering that North Korea just attended this Chinese parade in commemoration with commemoration for the 80th year of the ending of the 80th year since World War II had ended. It was actually a large showing of the global South and East Asia and BRICS countries in general, all showing their solidarity with one another against what is perceived to be the United States' global hegemony. It was a political statement. North Korea was part of that. Kim Jong-un met with Xi Jinping and President Putin personally. They had photos together. It was pretty apparent that the most prominent members of this gathering were meant to be Xi Jinping, President Putin, and Kim Jong-un for good reason. So I would assume somebody thought this was the perfect time to release this to really upset the North Koreans, to further drive a wedge between any possible reconciliation between the United States and these other countries, almost to force the U.S. into a point where conflict is inevitable with this emerging block of powers attempting to assert their sovereignty. Plus, also, this makes President Trump look bad. People will say, well, he approved this mission. The SEAL team, apparently, according to this article, had, when they came upon their landing site in North Korea to plant this listening device, allegedly, and again, who knows if this is actually entirely true. I wouldn't put it past the American political scene to plant a false story, because special operations are something that's not disclosed to the public. It's not something addressed in front of Congress. There might not even be records of this. So it's basically just the New York Times' word against President Trump, unless President Trump admitted that he did order this operation. That being said, though, what happened apparently was the members of SEAL Team 6 had come up on the landing site. There was a fishing boat already there. The fishing boat had apparently spotted the SEAL team. The SEAL team had killed everyone on the boats. I don't know how many civilians exactly, but a handful. And then disposed of the bodies into the sea where they could never be found. So even if this operation was true, maybe all of North Korea knew was several of its citizens had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, but never really had any proof as to what happened. Once a body goes in the ocean, it doesn't take long for it to be unrecoverable. Now, again, like I said, the story might be BS, but again, this is meant to hurt and discredit the president. There are some entrenched forces within the United States government that are currently at war with one another. You have the Democratic establishment, the old guard Republican establishment, the neocons. You have the MAGA section of Trump's base. You have President Trump. You have all these different political factions all vying for a piece of the pie or control or revenge against one another. And this is the problem with this serious dysfunction in the American state. It's hard for the United States to have some kind of coherent foreign policy where it can be trusted, especially when every few years there's a completely new set of figures in office and a completely new set of foreign policy goals, or treaties that are signed by one president are often ignored by the next. This is unfortunate. Now, if President Trump did order this raid to happen at the time he was actually meeting with the Koreans about denuclearization, that's a massive risk, considering how sensitive the North Koreans are to any kind of encroachment on their territory, how quickly they are to, well, I wouldn't say declare war, but to saber rattle and threaten with nuclear weapons, especially considering this is also a nuclear power. The North Koreans generally don't play around very much. They become very belligerent very quickly, so this would seem like a very stupid risk on President Trump's part if it was ordered. Now, insofar as civilians being killed, I think people need to put some perspective on this. Let's look at President Barack Obama. How many weddings were drone struck under his orders? How many civilians were killed? How many children? How many old men and women? How many women in general? And how many civilians as a whole were killed by Barack Obama's drone strikes under, again, his orders? So hearing one side, who I know would follow that man to the ends of the earth, criticize President Trump for ordering an operation that killed civilians, I think is comical, considering every U.S. president orders operations that end up killing civilians. It's just an unfortunate reality of being in that kind of office. There's a reason why very few politicians are saints, because of the evil that is necessary when being in that kind of position of power. So what do I think happens now? Well, again, this is just part and parcel to American politics, just behind the scenes backstabbing or attempted backstabbing to sabotage the current sitting president. Like I said, this would not stand in other countries. I think that's one of the major issues the United States has, is this dysfunctional mess that's our government. Some people would say it's one of our strengths. It protects us from tyranny, I guess. I disagree. I think this is actually things that are going to hurt us in the long run, especially if we do get into some kind of long protracted war with governments that are much more efficient and direct and have much less infighting and are actually controlled by a tangible central nexus of power. Do I think it's plausible that President Trump ordered such an operation? I mean, possible. It could have happened. Was it reckless and foolish if he did? Sure. Seemed needlessly risky. Do I think this was released just to throw a wrench in President Donald Trump's foreign policy at a time when I wouldn't say tensions are at an all-time high, but at a time when the world is at a very critical crossroads, where the world is trying to peel itself away from unipolarity and towards multipolarity, at a time when North Korea, China, Russia, and India, and various other nations are seemingly forming some kind of economic alliance. Would it simply solidify the fact that the United States can't be trusted at its word, that President Donald Trump can't be trusted at his word? He wants to make a deal with somebody who, while in the process of making a deal, sent special forces teams into that country and to kill civilians, which, funny enough, is actually pretty standard practice for the United States, which is why countries in general don't trust us. Our foreign policy establishment is stupid enough to where they'll reach out a hand in friendship and try to make some kind of deal at the same time, sabotaging that country economically or attempting to overthrow it. I mean, we are one of the most duplicitous countries on the face of the earth, unfortunately, and I wish we weren't like that, and I wish our government was smarter than that, but they're not. Will anything actually come out of this? I don't know. It's hard to say. Will the North Koreans actually take this seriously? I think we'll find out pretty quickly, because if there was an incident where 5 or 6 fishermen disappeared under mysterious circumstances, never to be seen again, well, the North Koreans will know exactly what happened, and I would expect a response. Now, if the North Koreans say nothing, I would assume that this operation perhaps didn't happen. that this is something just spun out by somebody within the intelligence community just to hurt the president, knowing that if it didn't actually happen, then the North Koreans wouldn't respond, so there's really no risk of starting a war, but this would just hurt President Trump's foreign policy nonetheless. It's hard to say. But anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. We'll be back Wednesday with another video, and everyone out there, take care, and if you like this video, please drop a like and subscribe. Thank you.